Coming up next, a look at the last 10 years of Interstellar Modeler. Well, hey guys, and welcome back to another Interstellar Modeler. It is now the end of 2023. The new year is just around the corner. And as mentioned a few times on the channel, 2023 has been a special year for me in that it marks the 10th anniversary for the channel here. The first video was published in April of 2013. And here we are 305 videos later, 22,400 subscribers, and 3,857,513 views so far. It's like these numbers are absolutely mind-boggling for me. It's just amazing for me to think of. I really didn't have any particular direction for the channel other than it was just something I wanted to put together to share my model building experiences with you guys. But wow, yeah, it's just amazing for me to think about all of that. So I've been wanting to put this together for some time. As mentioned, the anniversary was back in April, but April, June, you know, that April, May, June, that's a very busy time for me because Wonderfest is in June, and you might recall I had a few projects I was working on to get ready for that. So I've kind of kicked this down the line here a bit, and but now that I have time to put this together, I'm finally going to get it on the channel. So I was trying to give some thought as to what to do for this video, and I've decided that the best way to reminisce over the last 10 years is just to look at the top 10 most viewed videos on the channel and pull out those projects, take a look at them, kind of see how well they're holding up, what my goals were for the particular projects at the time I was putting them together, and maybe step back and take a look and see if I would do anything differently today. So I have most of those projects. I believe there's one that I don't have. It was a gift for a friend, yeah, I think it would be interesting to take a look at those. The other thing that we'll do is reminisce a little bit about or take a look back at some of the other things I've done with the channel, including the interviews I've done and, of course, the hot off the bench segments. All right, well, before we get started with the top 10 videos, I thought it'd be good to take a look at the original 350 scale Enterprise that I built. So let's take a walk back to my office and take a look at the model that started this all. All right, so here behind me is the 1/350 scale model that I built of the Enterprise. Man, 10 years ago. Hard to believe it's been 10 years. But I thought I would take a minute just to show you the model and give you an idea of how it's been holding up here. It's interesting that as I look back at all my work over the last 10 years, there are times when you are self-critical about things, particularly as you look back on them with experience that you've gained. It's easy to be to criticize yourself and think, yeah, I could have done that a lot better, and this model is no exception. There is one particular thing that always bugs me, and that is the seam that surrounds the saucer section. So this is something that I was not confident in covering when I was doing this model. Particularly what made it a challenge for me were the grid lines that are etched or engraved into the model there because they perpendicularly cross that seam, so you have to deal with not only the seam itself but all these other lines that surround it. Now eventually Polar Lights came out with a replacement part that you could use instead of the one that came with the kit, and this is a replacement part that had no grid lines at all, which would make that seam a lot easier. So if I were to redo this model or rebuild it, I'd certainly try to get a hold of that. The other thing that has happened that might have been better addressed when I first was putting together the model is there's a little bit of a gap now showing here where the neck meets the secondary hull. This is something that started about a year or two or so afterwards. It wasn't there right away, but the front section started to sag a little bit. Now luckily it hasn't, just by the way this is engineered, it hasn't increased any, so that's basically staying the same there. All the rest of the lights, let me go ahead and turn them on, are working. Throughout the hull you can still see everything is nicely lit. The running lights work, all the lights along the top section and secondary hull and so forth, and the shuttle bay all are functioning. The one thing that is not working now are the additional lights that are inside the nacelles. So you have the orange glow, which we're getting as you see there, but what's missing now are the red, green, and blue blinking lights that are installed to help replicate the look of the nacelles that was seen on the show. These lights stopped functioning about a couple years or so. They didn't seem to last too long. They first started to go intermittently, but then they completely went. and so now they no longer function. I'm not inclined to open up the model to try to troubleshoot and see what's going on with the circuit board. I'm just leaving it as it is. Now, of course, the illumination all comes from the original Polar Lights kit that came with the model, that you purchase separately, I should say. So a lot of the LEDs are the 3mm bulbs now, and of course we have the motors that provide the turning blades. So if I were to build a new model, there's a couple things I would do differently. Of course, I would use that replacement part, as I mentioned, so we can treat that seam appropriately. Also, to try to do what I could to prevent this from happening. But with the lighting kit, I would not use the Polar Lights lighting kit. I'm not sure if that's even still available. I would opt for some of the other ones that became available eventually, all of which just depend on LED lighting. There's no motors that provide that effect there. I was always worried that these motors would eventually give out. So far they haven't. I don't light up the model very often, so hopefully they'll last a long while. Looking towards the back of the ship now, you see the shuttle bays still lit up nicely. I'm glad I did install the shuttle bay because it's a nice effect. I recall installing that shuttle bay was a bit of a challenge because it's a tight fit. I remember having to leave out a couple of LEDs just to get it in there, but really happy that I went forward with that because it's really nice to be able to look there in that shuttle bay and see the shuttlecraft sitting there ready for launch. Okay, well that is a look at the 1/350 scale Enterprise. Let's go ahead and head back now to the workbench. Okay, we're ready to get started here with our countdown, and coming in at number 10 is the Battlestar Galactica from Mobius Models. So this is about a 1/4100 scale of the Battlestar, as seen in the original series, and measures about 15.5 inches in length. As you may recall, Monogram did produce a kit of the ship, but it was a huge disappointment since it lacked a lot of the greeblies and detailing that the ship was known for. Mobius released this kit about 9 years ago, and they did a pretty decent job with the ship. Although not 100% accurate, many of the details on the hull resemble those seen on the filming miniature. Eventually, there were additional parts and photo etch materials that you could buy to make the model more accurate. I did not add any of those in this case. I decided to light the ship using fiber optics, and this actually became the only project I ever lit this way. The landing bays were also lit, and I used Photoshop to create a miniature version of the matte painting seen in the show that depicts the interior of the bays. What would I do differently today? Well, I'm not sure I'd use fiber optics again, and I probably would end up using some of those replacement parts. But overall, I'm very pleased with this kit, and I'm very happy to have it in my collection. Number 9 is a kit I no longer have in my possession, as it was one of the only commissions I've done. This is the 1/48 scale Hawk from Space 1999. This one is definitely more accurate than the MPC model from the 1970s. It's interesting that although the ship only appeared in one episode, it's very popular among the fans. I suppose it has a certain mystique since we don't really know much about the ship, only that it was designed to be a fighter, in contrast to the utilitarian Eagle. As with the Galactica, aftermarket parts were available to add to this kit, one of which allowed you to add detailing to the cockpit. As for what I would do differently today, I don't think I would do anything much different, as I had no interest in adding the interior detail due to poor visibility. I've seen some modelers light up the engines, but since they never lit the engines on the show, I never felt that they looked right illuminated. Well, coming in at number 8 now is the 1/48 scale Eagle, also from Space 1999. All of these so far have been models that we've wanted a more accurate kit of, and the Eagle is no exception. The old MPC kit was small and full of inaccuracies, and Jamie Hood and the folks at Round 2 really took this to the next level. Now, I built 2 Eagles on the channel, and this is the second of the 2, the first being the Medical Eagle. With this version, I took on some creative license by adding in some strobe lights, lights over the door, and the landing gear. For this build, I designed and created some decals to help with the paneling, and I also added in the springs for the landing gear. And if I were to rebuild this, the one thing I definitely would do for sure would be to spend more time painting the figures. This was before I used to spend any time with figures, and they really do lack workmanship. And this is especially noticeable when viewed alongside the work I spent on the rest of the ship. But overall, I'm very happy with the way everything turned out, and it is yet another one of my favorites in my collection. Well, coming in as the 7th most watched video is the SSN Seaview. I've often said that this last decade has been a new golden age for sci-fi models. Companies like Polar Lights, Mobius, and Round 2 have all been instrumental in getting us models we've always wanted, and the Seaview is yet another example of this. Compared to many of the models produced in the late 60s and early to mid 70s, the Aurora kit of the Seaview wasn't all that bad. I used to wish, however, that it was just larger, and that I preferred the TV version rather than the one seen in the film.
Well, this kit met both those wishes and more. This 1/128th model measures 3 feet long, is the configuration seen on the show, and comes with an interior of the bridge, a flying sub, diving bell, and a small utility sub. What more could you want? Because of the size and all the work I did to detail the bridge, I really wanted to light this model up, so it became the first model I ever lit. Unfortunately, you really can't see much of the detail due to some of the distortion from the plastic windows, and that I only placed one LED inside. At the time, I was just excited to get light into a model, but in hindsight, and with having more experience now, I would have added in more lights. If I were to build this ship today, I would also complete the rest of the exterior lighting and would outfit the flying sub bay with magnets to allow the attachment of the sub. Incidentally, Polar Lights eventually released the movie version a couple years later. The Seaview continues to be displayed in my office and still makes a really impressive display. It's held up pretty well overall. In at number 6 is the refit of the NX-01 from Star Trek Enterprise. This show was short-lived compared to the other series in the Berman era, but surprisingly there's a lot of interest in this refit. This kit is a modified version of the NX-01 and not the one that we saw on the show. Had the series gone on to a 5th season, we apparently were going to see this new version on screen. It's interesting that Polar Lights went to the extent of producing a concept model, particularly from a show that wasn't as popular as the other Trek series. I, however, loved the show and thought the addition of the secondary hull by production designer Doug Drexler was brilliant. It's a logical evolution to the configuration we later see in the Constitution class. The ship is 1/1000 in scale, so it's small, measuring only about 9 inches in length. To help detail the ship, I used paint masks from Lou Del Maso. Prior to this, the NX-01 Enterprise was released in its screen configuration in both the 1/1000 and 1/350 scales. This version is extremely difficult to find now, but I'm hoping that they decide to re-release it at some point. I'd love to rebuild it with lighting. Coming in at the 5th most popular video is the Star Wars Resistance X-Wing as seen in The Force Awakens. I no longer have the kit since it was a gift for a friend, but these are some pictures I can share with you. This is a snap-type model that was produced by Revell and released around the time that the movie came out. It's 1/50th in scale and actually came pre-painted. I, however, painted over the included detailing and added my own blue paint scheme, which I felt was more accurate in color to the one seen in the film. The ship incorporates some of the early Macquarie design elements, such as the semicircular intakes, which I thought was interesting. Again, the kit was a snap-type model, so it was a little light on the details. Nonetheless, it was a fun model to assemble. The Resistance Fighter was also later released by Bandai. And the 4th most popular video is the one that shows the building of the Mobius Battlestar Galactica Viper. This model was superior to the old monogram kit in a number of ways. Not only was the fuselage shaped more correctly, but surface details and added details to the engine were a welcome improvement. But most of all, Mobius went one step further by giving us an open cockpit and figure. To be fair, Revell did modify the kit from the closed cockpit originally found with the 1970s release, and this was done with its 30th anniversary edition. But the Mobius cockpit was even better. For this kit, I did include photo etch details for that cockpit, and I purposely left the canopy unglued to allow for viewing. I also added in some flickering LEDs for the engines. Not sure there's anything I'd do differently with this model. Through the years, it's held up pretty well, and incidentally, the kit now is very difficult to find. Alright, well, coming in for the 3rd most popular video now is a model I have always wanted. This is the B-Wing from Star Wars. This kit was released by Bandai, and having built a number of their models, I have really come to love their Star Wars model kits. People complain they're too small, but considering my space limitations, they are perfect. Their kits are beautifully engineered and detailed, and this kit was certainly no exception. This model was the special edition released at Comic-Con, although it wasn't very different than the one that was widely released. What made it a special edition is that the ship came with some detailing for the wings and cockpit that allowed one to make different versions, but they really don't look all that different to me. One modification I made was with the decals here, as I chose to use an aftermarket set rather than the ones included with the kit. This model came ready for lighting as it had the assembly for the lights and batteries already included. Well, coming in at number 2 now is another Bandai kit. This is a unique release by Bandai called the Star Wars Death Attack. A number of the Bandai kits came with Death Star tiles as a base, and someone at Bandai really had their thinking cap on when they came up with the idea of combining those bases with their smaller 144 models. I thought it was a brilliant move on their part. The 1/144 kit came with 12 tiles, an X-wing, and a turret. I decided to expand it a little bit by adding in 3 more tiles, 2 of which I had extra from previous Bandai kits, and I bought a resin tile to complete the base. The extra surface area then allowed me to add in a Y-wing and a second X-wing. And by the way, I did get a little grief by making that second X-wing Blue Squadron, but what can I say? I'm a huge Rogue One fan, and I wanted to add him in. Again, a well-engineered kit. Since there are no seams to worry about, the entire thing came together quite easily. I decided to add in some lighting, which included simulated explosions. The window lights that you see in the background there are fiber optics, and I included a pulsating blue light at one end. Now, I think if I were to redo this kit today, I would choose to do the explosions with expandable foam instead of cotton. But overall, though, I'm happy the way it all turned out. Again, kudos to Bandai for offering us fans a very unique model kit.
Well, I hope you're enjoying this review of all the models that are associated with the top 10 videos here on my channel. I am ready to get to number 1, but before I do that, I thought I would spend a second here to talk about some honorable mentions. These are models that came to mind as I was trying to think of ones that were memorable to me. I've enjoyed doing all of the ones that I've done here on the channel, but these are the ones that just particularly stand out right now. So let's get to them here real quick. This is the Invisible Man from Mobius Models. It was one of 3 buddy builds that I've done on the channel. My friend Mark Fraley joined in on this buddy build with me, and it was sure a lot of fun to do. It is beautifully designed. It's a model that does a really good job at capturing the essence of the famous character, and it continues to certainly be one of my favorite builds. Next up is the Shuttlecraft Galileo, yet another model that many of us wish to have had a more accurate model of, and round 2 sure came through. They corrected not only all of the inaccuracies of the exterior, but provided a beautiful interior along with figures as well. A big thanks to round 2 for this one for sure. Next one is a model that conjures up a lot of childhood memories for me, and that is the Jonny Quest diorama I did early last year. It is a nicely done sculpt designed by a guy named UEL on CG Trader. It includes all of the main characters from the amazing animated series from the 1960s, and absolutely loved working on it. Up next is another good example of what is now possible with 3D printing. This is the Battlestar Galactica launch tube. This is a project that I could not have completed this way without the help of my friend Mark Fraley, who designed most of the STL files that allowed me to create this diorama. And next we have a more recent build. It is the Cyclops from X Plus Models. This was a build from earlier this year that I really enjoyed working on. If you are a fan of Ray Harryhausen, this is one I would highly recommend getting. And lastly are a series of casted sculpts from Blackheart Models that is representative of something that I really come to love doing, painting figures and busts. It's not something that I had ever imagined getting into, but I really do enjoy doing it now. Over the last few years, I've worked hard to perfect my skills of blending and shading, and I love the challenge this type of work provides. I definitely look forward to doing more, and certainly hope that Blackheart continues to release more of these types of sculpts. Well, it's now time to reveal number 1 to you guys, and this is it right here. It's a 2-foot Millennium Falcon. This, of course, is the Hasbro toy conversion I did back in 2015, and out of all of the videos I've posted on my channel, it's the completion of this particular project that has generated the most views. That video comes in at 314,075 views. Now, there are 4 parts to the build posted on the channel, and accumulated views altogether are 389,258 views so far, and I say so far because it still generates views even today. I've gotten questions about this project from literally all over the world, so a lot of people have been interested in it and continue to be so. And it is a project that was very unique and a lot of fun to work on. It included all of the things I really love about model building, particularly with weathering, detailing, scratch building, trying to come up with accommodations for the project, just trying to come up with different ideas. So it really was a very interesting and great project to work on. So let me go ahead and spend a minute or 2 here to review this build with you. I believe this toy was released for the Christmas 2014 season, and it was a Hasbro Disney Walmart exclusive. Now, I had to rewatch these videos to refresh my memory, but the cost of this toy was close to $100 at one point, but quickly dropped after the holiday season. I was able to buy mine for under $30. It's my understanding that it didn't sell all that great, and that's probably because play with this toy was somewhat limited, since it was just a shell of the Falcon that couldn't accommodate any action figures. I began to notice buzz about the toy in early 2015, and then started seeing posts on Facebook showing how modelers were converting it into a more realistic looking model. Eventually, additional parts such as replacement cockpit nose cones and other pieces were quickly becoming available.
The cockpits became fancy enough to even include an interior, which motivated some modelers to light up the cockpit. Randy Cooper eventually produced a detailing kit that included resin pieces and greeblies for the sides of the ship, since the toy lacked any detail along the mandibles and aft sections. And he also ended up designing covers for the landing gear if you chose to build a ship in a flying configuration. Eventually, even landing gear became available. Randy additionally designed photo etch pieces that included grille covers for the round intakes and a large one for the rear exhaust port. Out of all of this stuff, I chose to buy the photo etch parts and scratch built my own details along the mandibles and aft sections. As for lighting, I just chose to illuminate the engines using 5mm flickering cool white LEDs. The conversion required paint adhesion promoter since this was made of polypropylene plastic, and after the base color was applied and adhered, I used pastels to weather and detail the surface. Photos from the book Star Wars Building a Galaxy were helpful as a guide. In the end, although it's not 100% accurate, I had a really nice 2-foot replica of the Millennium Falcon.
Well, that was a good way, I think, to review some of the models that I've done over the years. It was interesting to see which videos came out on top like that. But I've done over 103 models throughout the last 10 years, including some of these that you see on this slide here. If you have a favorite, let me know. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Well, before wrapping up here, I thought I would acknowledge and revisit a couple things that I've done in addition to model building with the channel, one of which was Hailing Frequencies Open. This was my attempt to reach out to modelers in the hobby who'd be willing to be interviewed and to share their experience with the hobby and share some of their work. I started out the segment with having friends of mine like Mark Fraley and Ken Spriggs, who I've really come to know over the years, both talented model builders. Ken now has his own YouTube channel that grows every year. Had also the chance to interview people like Lou Dalmaso, who is a huge contributor to our hobby, such a great personality and a lot of fun to hang around with. Randy Cooper is yet another person I interviewed, someone who's actually been in the industry, who was a professional model builder for the studios. And a guy named Joshua Melville, who actually was the guy who encouraged me to think about doing other things with the channel. And he also got me to attend model shows. I had never attended a model show prior to talking with this guy. And so he got me to share some of my work at some model shows up in the Anaheim and the LA area. Really talented model builder himself, and he was interviewed twice in the segment, so you can catch him on the initial interview. He was the first guy I ever interviewed in the segment, and also he did a second interview talking about the DeAugustini Millennium Falcon, which was a Falcon that you could subscribe to the service to, and they would send you parts, and through that process you'd end up building a pretty good size replica of the Millennium Falcon. So you can catch his interviews there on HFO. And eventually, though, I had to set aside HFO because it became a bit of a challenge to... actually, the biggest challenge, really, of trying to put those segments together was trying to coordinate things between my work schedule and everyone else's work schedule, and the fact that we were in different time zones made it quite a challenge and made it a bit difficult to sometimes coordinate everything. So as fun as it was to do that segment, I had to give it up. But take a look at them. It's a series of about 16 videos that were posted on a channel through a course of 2 years. And I will mention that through that experience, I became more confident interviewing people. I'd never interviewed anyone prior to that. And I would say the highlight of my interview experience so far has been interviewing Nick Tate. If you haven't seen this, you got to go back to it. It was from Wonderfest of this last year, and really big joy and a pleasure to talk with him. A lot of fun to hang out with the guy. So take a look at that interview. I think it went pretty well for the most part. And a couple other noteworthy interviews from this last year's Wonderfest include Phil Siegel, who is a producer in Hollywood and is a model builder, has a YouTube channel himself now. And there's Bill Krause, who's a talented scratch builder, and he actually contributed to seasons Picard 2 and 3. And by the way, I also have an interview with him on Interstellar Modeler HFO. Well, if you hadn't had a chance to view any of these, I'd highly recommend it. These were a lot of fun to do and true pleasure to talk to these guys. And even though I might not be doing HFO any longer, I do plan on hopefully getting a few other interviews here on the channel as time goes by. Well, just a quick revisit here. And finally, a quick revisit to Hot Off the Bench. This was a segment I created in response actually to the fact that I was setting aside HFO and still wanted to share the work of other modelers on the channel. So instead of interviewing them, what I decided to do was to reach out to modelers as they posted pictures of their completed works on Facebook, and seeing if they were willing to send me pictures of their work so that I could string it together into a slideshow. This was then followed by a short discussion about a model tool or something new that had come out to help us out with our hobby, and then this in turn was followed by a model tip. I thought the format worked out great. This was a lot of fun to put together, but unfortunately it all came down to a question of time. Each modeler was given about 4 or 5 pictures per model, and so to string that together and to narrate, I underestimated the time it took to put together a slideshow like that. Trying to squeeze that into not only all the other projects I was working on in the channel, but also just my work schedule, it became too difficult, so I had to hang that up as well in 2022. But I do appreciate all the support and all the positive feedback I got for both HFO and Hot Off the Bench. I really do appreciate that. And again, these segments can also be seen on the channel as well. And there's a series of about 17 videos for Hot Off the Bench. Okay, well, it's just about time to wrap up here. Just a few more comments for you if you just bear with me here. First of all, a big thank you to all of you. I am very grateful for all of your encouragement and support throughout all of these years. I never would have made it here without you guys, so thank you very much for your continued support and for watching the channel. And also another big thank you to Boyd from TrekWorks. I want to mention him because if there's anyone that inspired me to create the channel, he's one guy who did. And just to quickly give you a backstory here, I was, as you know, getting ready to put together the 350 scale Enterprise. That's what started this whole thing. And at the time, I was actually looking for content online that would help me with my model skills. Even though I had been back in the hobby for a number of years, I felt my skills weren't quite up to speed if it was going to come to building something this big. So I just wanted to learn more. And when I went on YouTube, I couldn't really find a lot of good content. There were speed building videos, which didn't provide a lot of information. There were guys that were willing to talk, but unfortunately, they talked way so much, they ended up on tangents that made me lose interest in what I was watching. And then I came across TrekWorks. So the name drew me into me because of the fact it was related to Trek, and I was interested in the Star Trek project. And I really did enjoy his videos from the very start. I thought his delivery, his demeanor, and his way of just getting information across to you, you really did learn a lot, and you continue to do so. He's still making videos on his channel. And so a lot of the stuff I initially did with my channel and the way I went about providing information was patterned after what he did. And so he, like I said, is continuing to make videos and doing fantastic work. If you're not familiar with his channel, I'd highly recommend it. The link is below. So thank you, Boyd, for all the work you've done through the years as well. You've been a huge contributor to our hobby, and I wish you well, and I look forward to seeing more content from your channel as well. Well, before I go here, I wanted to answer one other question, and that is, how much longer am I going to be doing Interstellar Modeler? Honestly, as I was going through 2022, I really intended to make 2023 the final year for the channel. I figured it'd been 10 years. That's a good block of time. A lot of content has been provided here, but I've changed my mind since then. As I started 2023, I was kind of going up and down still about it, but after corresponding with you guys and being inspired again at Wonderfest, that always recharges my batteries. As I said, I've since then changed my mind, and I'm going to continue on with the channel for now. How much longer? I really don't have a time set, so we'll just kind of see how it goes. As you know, I've gotten into oil painting, which I really do enjoy. In fact, this is my latest oil painting here. This was something commissioned by my friend, the Mediocre Modeler. He's going to be using it on an upcoming project, but it's something I really do enjoy and want to pursue. Doesn't mean I'm going to get out of model building, because I really do enjoy doing that as well. I just won't be making videos, but I'm, like I said, not sure when that's going to be. So we'll just see how it goes. Well, now that I've answered that, let me just wrap up here by letting you know what's coming up on the channel now. I'm on my hiatus from model building, as I usually take one during the months of December and January. So my next project will be on the channel in mid-February. However, I do have 2 videos that I'll be posting in January, and these are a couple more products I'd like to share with you. Now, I want to say that I'm not turning the channel into a bunch of product promotion. I've been approached by a number of companies about promoting products, and I've turned a number of them down because that's not really what the channel is about. But if there is a product I think you guys would really be interested in or benefit from, then I would look into that, and these 2 in particular I think you'd be interested in. So just watch for those in January. Okay guys, well thanks again for watching, and thanks also for hanging out with me to commemorate my 10 years here on YouTube. And I just want to wish you guys all the best. Have a safe and happy new year. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.